Hello and welcome to Tech Talks, the People and Planet podcast. On this episode, I'm joined by Clive Michelsen, the CEO of health tech business eHealth. Hello, Clive. How are you?
Hi, Lee. Fantastic. Thank you. And I hope you are too.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for joining us all the way from Sweden today. So thank you. Interested to get your insights on on the health tech industry at this moment. So talk to us a little bit more about eHealth then. It sounds a really interesting business. We're interested to find out a bit more about the problem that you guys are solving with the mission. And what struck me most tellingly, I think, when I did some background beforehand, was this phrase presenteeism, which I'd like you to unwrap a little bit for our listeners as well.
Sure. So that is actually many questions in one, so I'll try and answer them one after the other. I'll start with really who we are and what we do, and we really work in a preventive way, where we try to find early signs of challenges. So the stigma around mental health has always been quite large. So we're reframing that picture and we're looking at engagement in work and life, and finding out what challenges that everyone could have, and then help them with the coping skills that they need proactively to mitigate those challenges early. The earlier you can find these things, the easier it is to mitigate. Yeah. And that means that some behaviors then don't embed themselves into the nature and the behavior, because as soon as things start embedding themselves, the rehabilitation and the therapy that's needed to change that course is a lot deeper, and we provide that as well. So we provide everything from early assessments to proactive coping skills to also rehab if we find people that are burned out or have high presenteeism and things like that. So what do we really measure? We measure engagement, burnout, anxiety, depression, motivation, stress, defense routines, and also obviously presenteeism. And presenteeism really is, you can say, it's the opposite of engagement. So when you're fully engaged, then you're feeling, okay, everything's hunky-dory and I can get going. But if you feel any pressure on yourself, that pressure, that psychological pressure, which can also be psychosomatic, means you can also get somatic issues with psychological challenges, then that pressure becomes a burden and it's almost like a weight on you. So we measure a number of things, as I said, your exposure to and your risk exposure to burnout, anxiety, and depression. When you look at the amalgamation of all of those, and we've got algorithms that look at a weight scale, and then that weight gives us the weight of the presenteeism on you. Okay. And that presenteeism then is obviously detracts from your engagement ability. So your ability to engage in work and life also obviously is affected by the burdens that are around you. Yeah. So some people can use delusion and distortion and projection and other psychological terms in order to not deal with it. You can, like the old saying was, you can be an ostrich and you can put your head in the sand, right? Yeah. But then life's still going on and all these other things are still happening. And based upon the challenges that you have, you might be able to, like you can say fanatical sports, because we also deal with proaction in sports and school teenagers and things like that. But what can happen is we say sometimes to people, you can't run away from your problems. So the problems are there, and if you can face them and you can look in the mirror and you can get that feedback in an honest way, that mirror is going to tell you, okay, I'm not so good here. And then our whole support mechanism is there to help you to understand these things with somebody at your side, not to judge you, but to say, okay, how are we going to address this? Let's look at this. What do you think you would like to do? And help you to tackle these things in a non-biased and a
it's such an
proactive,
interesting
supportive
phrase,
role.
isn't it? Presenteeism. I think, you know, if it's probably not something that's very common. I've certainly never heard of it before. But, you know, I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, we've all had, we can all think of instances where we have been present but not really on it. And I guess that's a spectrum. You know, it could be, you know, as you say, you're completely ill from it, or you're just not feeling it. You know, you're procrastinating maybe, or, you know, even
That's
something.
right.
You know,
So,
and I think that's happened to pretty much everyone.
that's right. So you can say, really, in simple terms, you can say, when you're sick, homesick, you're absent. So that's absenteeism, right? But when you're at work or you're within an area and you're not well, and you know you're not fully engaged, then you have presenteeism. That is where you actually get, you just can't fully engage, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Shutting off.
As
and
you
things
say,
like
you see it in high-level sports as well, don't you?
That's right. You see it in, but in sports also, you've got things like performance anxiety, and you've got other issues that can be quite debilitating for people to get their mindset out of, and to change that perspective, right? Because, you know, we all own our perspective. So it's about helping people to also look at that perspective, analyze it, and say, well, it's not that important.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does this work then? How does the product itself work? You mentioned AI before, that's driving it behind the scenes as well.
That's right. We've got a lot of those kinds of things. So it's an online environment where we've got a whole array of caregivers, from health coaches to psychotherapists, psychologists, nurses, and doctor. And what happens is that, based on your need, which is associated between you and your health coach, you can then at any time bring in another member into your healthcare team, like a psychologist, to support you. But you usually take this up with your health coach, and it's one-on-one support where you meet online, you see each other. Everything's built into a secure, encrypted framework. So and we don't share data with anybody external. It's between you and my eHealth. That's it. So we protect you. The only way to get any data out is a court order.
Sure. Really interesting stuff. And Clive, you're in a competitive marketplace. There's various web and mobile applications out there that tackle or try to tackle employee engagement. How, you know, I've spoken to lots and lots. One thing that seems to be quite common is that it's quite subjective in terms of a return on the investment of a business buying this. How can you guys deliver that ROI?
Okay, so I think with that ROI, I'm going to answer this in a few parts, because it's really important. Return on investment is key for companies to understand. Should we invest in our employees? So if we go back to all the noise in the market, sure, there are a lot of apps out there. There are lots of people trying to sell a solution and solutions that are not validated. They don't have any clinical trials. They don't have correct understanding of how somebody actually feels. Did they interpret the question right? So even in you can say in real life, if you go to the NHS and you go into the psych department, for instance, and they give you a survey, take this assessment and tell us how you feel. And then all of a sudden you answer those questions, but then nobody really asks you, is this how you really feel with these specific questions, which are then, and that's what we do. We go through all the different questions. Not only that, is the individual has to then validate, this is how I am feeling. And then we've got control questions in there and all sorts of things where we can see what's going on. And naturally, we've done clinical trials and we've done all of those things and been published many times. So we're pretty secure in the data that we bring to the companies.
Yeah.
In aggregate data, that means that this is what the company risk levels are. These are where they are, which departments they're in. Although we'll never, it's all aggregate data, so you don't we don't divulge or impede on anybody's integrity. It'll only be groups of people. If there's more than 12 females, for instance, in one specific department, then you can say, okay, the difference between males and females look like this. And that's really good for strategy and for companies to help with inclusion and diversity and all this kind of stuff. So the tools that we bring to the company is information. It's really, there's a lot of information about where are our concerns, what should we be doing, how can we adjust our culture, and then in the background, we also there to help them on an individual basis where we know the challenges facing individuals. So our health coaches then go into action and we start to help individuals straight away. Yeah. And the ROI really works out is what we do is when we measure the presenteeism level for an individual and for the company, we can look at the aggregate level. And as the aggregate level changes, we can measure that then against your salary costs. So when we know if your company has salary costs of 14 million pounds, for instance, then we would look at presenteeism levels based on our start period and any periods we want to compare it to. And then we will work out the costs, and we then can show a return on investment based on a reduction in presenteeism compared to salary costs, which is a direct savings to the company, because then you're not only getting people more engaged, but it's also helping with teamwork, dynamics, with creativity, innovation, all sorts of things around the workplace.
Yeah, and for sure, and staff retention, all of those.
Sure, absolutely. You look after your staff; those are the ones that are going to look after your customers.
Absolutely.
Right. Those are the ones that interact with your customers, and they invent new ways to improve processes and things like that.
Yeah, of course, and then avoid losing all of that knowledge that's already in the company to go somewhere else, and then have to spend months and months and months trying to rehire someone and pay recruitment fees and all of that sort of stuff.
That's
so
right.
There's a direct link there, isn't there? Which I think
and that all starts
for someone who's, you know, perhaps not as in tune to the product itself, but is looking at the bottom line figures. You know, I'm thinking about FDs or the CEOs of businesses.
Yeah. So there's two sides to this. One is that happy employees are productive and they're engaged, right? It's not just that everyone's running around laughing all the time. It means that you have a sustainable approach in the way that you think and your perspective within your environment. So that's the sustainability and human sustainability in owning my perception and dealing with those challenges is really quite important. But then at the same time, for companies, it's really important to understand the difference between when you're doing general maintenance on, say, you've got a machine parked downstairs in the hall, right? And then it tells you that you've got to change the gearbox every 3 years, and you change your gearbox every 3 years, right? And you change the oil because it tells you change the oil, or you're driving the car and then the car lights come on and goes bling, 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 bling. You need to get a service, you get a panic and you take the car in and you get it serviced, right? But then nobody's checking the employees. And that's what we do. So we there as the monitors in the background to help each individual in a good, private, secure space where they can feel comfortable, they can connect with a coach that they like, and that they can get feedback and they can help themselves in their life, really.
Absolutely. So Clive, you started 6 years ago. It's rarely plain sailing.
No, it sure isn't. It actually, my eHealth started 6 years ago, but the framework for what we're working with started 24 years ago.
Did it really?
It started in 2000 as a management tool to measure psychosocial wellness in the workplace during change projects. So when I used to be a change consultant in the old days, I wanted to measure that the change that I did in the company would also not only improve the economics, but it would also improve the people's wellness within their environment. Yeah. And so that's why this thing was created. And then obviously, as the psychological aspect increased and the understanding of three major keys, you can say, within the environment. It's your perspective, really, which is affected by your symptomatic response, your causal response, and your psychosomatic response. So these questions then incorporate all of that within you and your environment, and how that changes, and then we put it into a medical instrument, which took many iterations and a lot of research, because it's really it's not that easy. It's not like baking. It's not like baking a cake.
Exactly. Well, so what's been the main challenges over that time when you actually started the business 6 years ago?
A big challenge, because in the beginning, when we understood the necessity to scale this and how we could integrate a hybrid workforce, we were really the odd ducks, because nobody was talking about a hybrid workforce. Nobody was looking at how we could connect caregivers from all over the place, and they could meet you online, because online wasn't the thing to do in the before Skype came out and before COVID, really. Nobody believed in online therapy. And we said, well, we can prove it. It works. They didn't want to listen. They were all shut off. So there's no, it doesn't work. You got to go into the clinic. You got to go into clinician and waste an entire day leaving work. And then and instead we can do it in a couple of hours online and a lot more effective. So we had a big challenge trying to convince people that you could do this online. And, we've proven it with a number of publications where we can actually do this very effectively, and in some cases better than the clinical setting, because we can use the power of the digital environment. And this is where AI, VR, virtual reality, augmented reality, and all of these fantastic tools that you've got today can help us to bring everything into one area, to help us to help the individual to see the picture in another way, to repaint the picture, and then to understand, this is how I see things. How would I like it to be? Is that realistic picture that I want it to be? I can't say that, oh, I want to have a Ferrari tomorrow, because if you don't have the money to buy the Ferrari, you're not going to have it, right? So it's also to bring that reality into perspective, so that the person can then understand, okay, I've got a course to do in order to get that Ferrari. And so when you can use the digital environment the way we do, it's really cool.
And if you think a face-to-face meeting with a clinician would probably compound the problem, right?
Well,
someone had to take time off work. They've got to, and they're already disengaged. Surely that's not going to make them more engaged to spend a lot more time out of work. I don't know.
Well, I don't want to run down the clinical settings, because there are many instances where that is really important, to take somebody out of their environment. But especially if you've got suicide ideation and things like that. But so there are phases where we want people to leave the online environment and go to the clinical setting. But in the base of all medicine, you've got one golden rule, and that's triage. And the triage part is to understand how we can help the most of people with the easiest solution, and that's good for everyone, where we can bring teams together and we can do all of this stuff that we need in order to help them. And so, I think the online environment, again, compared to the clinical, has many advantages. It saves time for both the company and for the individual. It allows us to extend sessions at many times. So we don't just do, if we're doing therapy with someone, we don't do therapy for just 1 hour and say, come back next week or in 2 weeks and we'll talk about it again. Because what happens is then the psychologist is the only one getting rich. What we try to do is we try to spend the time with you to solve these situations. So if we need to sit down for 3 hours, we sit down for 3 hours and we talk. And sometimes when I've met some patients, we say to them, well, we will continue today until we've got nothing more to talk about. And that means you get to the root of many, many issues. And then you can think about those root causes, and you don't have to start from scratch every week, because you've only got an hour, and half of that hour is about preliminaries. Right. And so I think, and then again, we also use mixed methods. So a lot of times, if you go to a clinical setting, you could be limited to the amount of support that you get. So you might only get psychodynamic, you might only get CBT. With us, what we do is we mix all of these therapies together, where you can have DBT, that's dialectical behavioral therapy, or you can get Gestalt therapy, which is really important also because it connects feelings with visual aspects. And CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, right, and psychodynamic and transpersonal and positive psychology, and all of these, in order to find what's going to make your cogwheels turn.
Yeah.
So we don't want to like put you in a box and then also, well, you only get a psychodynamic and we have to do regression. But we don't have to always do regression. Go back in time and try to look at the origins of certain things. Sometimes you need that, and sometimes you don't need that.
Understood. So, Clive, what about hiring? You know, what makes you an employer of choice for talent out there? Where you know it's a competitive marketplace. You mentioned some pretty cool stuff before, like VR and AR and AI. Tell us a little bit more about what you would say makes you an employer of choice.
I think we have the funnest job in the world, really. We're helping people. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. We seem to have found a niche where everyone that comes to us has the same kinds of value structures. So we're thinking about the good in people. We're thinking about finding and helping people. We understand that we've got an aligned vision and mission to do good in the world. Of course, we have to charge for it because we've financed all this ourselves, right? And it's really, really expensive when you're a startup. But the common theme in everything is that everyone really cares, and from our IT engineers to our clinical staff and the leadership in all the different teams that we've got. What's so important is that everyone's always thinking about what can we do for the patient? Mm-hmm. What can we do for what do they need? And how can we help them? And even you can say the clinical teams, if you've got a health coach that feels that, well, the chemistry is really not there between me and the patient, then that you recommend someone else. Yeah. So, hey, speak to John, because he's a really cool guy, right? And tell him, you know, and then you can change. And when you find a therapist or a health coach that you like, it just works. Yeah, yeah. And this is what's so cool. But people find us, which is really, really cool now. And I think I just had an ad out on Friday, actually, for an AI VR engineer. And we got 3 positions opened, and we got 64 applications within 3 hours. Yeah, nice. So it's people want to come because it's fun. Absolutely. Because humanity, right? What's the difference between us and nature, really? We really care. Yeah. If we're not psychopaths and you're normal, it's empathy, isn't it? Yeah. That's the key thing. And I think it's, you know, from a hiring point of view, hiring people that share that mission is so important, you know, in not only in securing their services as an employee, but also, you know, if you're looking at your company product, Presenteeism, if they're buying into that mission, there's a high chance that you will have a lot lower presenteeism from that person in particular, I'm sure. And that's therefore right. A greater chance of keeping that person. They go on the journey with you, they have a great career, and, you know, everyone benefits from it. That's right. We've had some psychologists that were not well themselves, mm-hmm. and we've rehabbed them, and then they want to work with us. Wow. Okay. I mean, that's what's kind of cool, right? Is
Yeah,
that whether you go into the psychiatric department at the hospital, which we've done as well, and we've measured all of them, and then we found those that are at risk, and even those that were at risk, some of them want medication, and then you start rehabbing them, and then you get them better, and then they want to come and work with us. It's really a cool thing. Is that there's nothing negative about it. Is we there to help, and we, yeah, for lack of a better word, and I don't know if I should say this, but we give a shit.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just, we care. We want to do a good job. And I think most caregivers around the world really care, and they want to do a job. It's not about you've only got 10 minutes to see this person. It's about let's help them. Yeah. And then you take the time that you need, and the person gets better. And that's what I want us to be judged by. How many people are getting better? Right. Not how many people are waiting at the door that can't get in because everyone's fully booked. I want to show out how many people that get sick on our watch that we're looking after. And right now we've got zero sick leave for mental health for those that we look after. And then how many relapse after treatment. And we got zero relapse rate as well, which is also really cool, right? I think it's unrealistic to think when we have 1 million people in the system that we're going to still have a zero rate, because that's really hard, and that's the bar's really high. But there's always going to be things that happen, right? So I mean, I think if the NHS is just overburdened right now, if we think about the NHS with the mental health crisis that's going on. And it's because I usually equate this to that there's a big dam, and it just keeps raining mental health issues, and that dam just keeps overflowing, and they can never get control over the amount of water coming to that dam. What we do is that we try to stop that rain by looking at finding things proactively. Yeah, exactly. And then those that want to need to go to the clinical setting, then the NHS is available because they've emptied the dam, right?
It's prevention, isn't it? Prevention rather than cure.
That's right.
Clive, we're running out of time, but lastly, keen to hear any exciting developments that you've got coming up. What's next on the agenda?
Oh, I don't know if I should be telling you this. These are like real secrets. But because it separates us again from all the other people in the market, right? But we've got some, I'm not going to tell you the one of these things, but we've got some really cool automated stuff that's going to be coming out, integrating the human and the digital world, which puts us light years ahead of the noise in the market.
Fantastic.
And we're launching that actually in Singapore in November, the 9th and 10th of November at the Garmin Summit in Singapore. That's where we will be launching that.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, we'll keep our eyes peeled for that one then.
Yeah, so we have actually Garmin watches also in our system. That's fully integrated into my eHealth.
Is it?
So if you measuring psychometrics are one thing. The other thing is how to combine that with biometrics, and we do that. So if you've got a Garmin watch, you can just connect it, and then we get all your biometrics. We can see your sleep patterns. We can see your training patterns and all that kind of stuff, which is really cool.
That is interesting. And how the correlation between those things. I'm sure that sleep's got a big part to play.
Absolutely, sleep is. The golden rule.
I've got a 9-month-old baby son, so I know all about that at the moment.
Yeah, that's why you have to have kids in your 30s or earlier, because you got the energy to sleep 2 hours a night, but not when you're not later, right? It's really tough.
Exactly. Clive, it's been great to speak to you. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for coming on. Guys,
you're very welcome.
Clive Michelsen, the CEO of My eHealth. Thanks again, Clive.
Thank you very much, Lee. Had a lovely time.
You too.
Thanks. Bye.